Hi golfers, Rob Cheney here from GOLFTEC Singapore. Today's video we are going to discuss the top swing killers, those moves you're making every time you swing that are hurting your game, along with the drills you need to do to help you avoid making those mistakes. So today's video was inspired by an article I was reading last week on golf.com, which was written by the guys from Athletic Motion Golf, discussing the 10 biggest swing faults they see, having measured multiple golfers using their gear system. And I found the article quite interesting. There were certainly a lot of things that I would agree with. So I'm going to go through a number of those and discuss the drills that I would prescribe if you're making that error. And I'll also share a couple of ideas that maybe go against what they had found and what they'd reported, and things that I see every day when teaching here at GOLFTEC. If you are interested in reading the article, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at it. I'll link the article in the description below. So the first killer move we're going to discuss is the golfer who rolls the club behind them too much in the backswing. I see that happening for a number of reasons. Trying to swing more into out is often the case, and also because the golfer's not utilizing the body enough in terms of turning in the early part of the backswing. As a reference, by the time the shaft reaches parallel to the ground in the backswing, which would be position 2 or P2, the shoulders at the PGA Tour average would have turned over 50 degrees. And if you think there's only around 90 degrees in a good shoulder turn, you're getting more than half of it done by the time the club reaches parallel to the ground. So in this very early stage of the backswing, most of that shoulder turn should already have happened. If you're one of the golfers who sucks the club inside, rolls their hands too much, and isn't using the turn to start the swing, here's a great drill that you can do. So indoors at GOLFTEC, we use these every single day. This is the Tour Striker plane station. We're able to create a angled station here on the ground that we can use as our guidance. If you're practicing from the grass, you could do this with just a simple alignment stick angled into the ground around the same angle as the club shaft, the shaft of the club you're using. Taking my setup, if I was to just simply move or whip the club around me too quickly, I'm going to make contact with this noodle. So what I'm going to practice from P1 to P2 is just using my shoulder turn from the front view there and my shoulder tilt from a down the line view, and keep my club shaft and club head just above the noodle. This is me tracing the arc or tracing the grid that's on the ground. As I say, if I was to roll my hands away from me too quickly, I'm going to make contact with that noodle. So you can use this as a dry station, just doing some practice drills. Set this up, and then once you progress, you could actually go on and hit balls, keeping this in place. So the second killer move, which I see very, very often in the bay, but it doesn't get a lot of airtime or a lot of discussion, is overflexing the right arm or the trail arm, the right arm trail arm bend getting too great. That has an enormous factor in changing the swing's radius, and it's often the left arm that gets blamed for this. People say, I need to keep my left arm straight. So often it's the right arm that's the culprit, the overflexing of the right arm. So in a good player, you're going to see it's not going to reach 90 degrees, really. It's going to be just shy of that. And then as the arm flexes beyond that point, where we can see this excessive arm bend, it's losing width and it's affecting the swing's radius. It's going to cause all sorts of problems. As I say, I do see this one very often. It doesn't get talked about a great deal that I see in instruction. So a great drill for this one, go ahead and take your normal setup. Take your left hand off the club or your lead hand off the club and swing back only with your trail arm and your trail hand. And what you'll notice, what will happen, is you won't be able to, or you won't be comfortable over flexing this arm. Once the arm gets too flexed, it's going to feel extremely weak. So what I want you to do is swing back to a point where this arm feels quite straight. There's a little bit of flex there, but you're keeping this width and you're supporting the weight of the club. And then you can reach back with your lead arm to grab the club. And what that's going to help you to get a sense of is the right kind of width and the arm structure that that you're looking for in a functional backswing. The next big swing killer that I see are golfers who shift away from the target for too long, too much and for too long in the backswing, and never really get their weight forward again. In the article, they describe it as recentering. It's become a popular term in recent years. Once everyone finally realized that we're really not supposed to load back here into our right side and stay back here and transfer our weight forward, once people started to recognize that the best players actually stay very centered, it became fashionable to talk about recentering. Recentering is really just a way of describing a centered pivot. What's being said in the article is there's this tiny little shift away in the first piece of the swing as the arms and club move in this direction, but then the best players, by the time they reach the top, are already moving forwards again. It states in the article quite rightly that there's a very short amount of time in order to get this forward movement done, and that's why, for the most part, I'd prescribe no movement back in the backswing. Teaching amateur golfers to make a centered pivot with no shift is, in my opinion, a far better way to do it. So let me share with you a drill to stop that killer sway from happening. So once again, I'm making use of the Tour Striker plane station. This time I've got it positioned behind me. I've angled the noodle in such a way that it's just sitting off of my trail hip. Again, if you were doing this by yourself, you could maybe position a golf bag, your golf bag by your side if you're at the driving range. You could utilize even a chair or a table at home if you just wanted to practice this as a dry drill. What I'm going to prescribe is that from the setup, where there's maybe a couple of inches space here between my trail hip and the noodle, as I get to the top, the distance between that stays the same or increases slightly. I'm comfortable with a fairly sort of, there's a window of okay there. What we don't want to be doing is moving into and touching the noodle. So this is a really simple but really effective drill to help you start to make a more centered pivot in the backswing. The final one I want to discuss with you, I maybe don't agree quite so much with their results that they found. It's discussing the position of the club face when the shaft is parallel to the ground. And the article states that the big killer move they see are golfers having the club face pointing down to the ground too much, and they would prescribe more of a upward leading edge or vertical leading edge. It's not really my experience in the Bay teaching on a daily basis. I think this is one of those where it's clearly player dependent, but as a general rule, 90% of the people who come into the Bay here at GOLFTEC complain of slicing the ball. And slicing the ball would generally be associated with a face that is open too much to the path of the swing. And so I've had a lot of success personally teaching this to help people train their wrist angles to keep the club face pointing more down to the ground than I would say used to be taught as a more neutral position where the leading edge was vertical. What I'll say on this is you need to experiment, and I'll be specific. So if you tend to curve your ball to the right as a right-handed golfer, I would be actively encouraging you to check where your club face is at P2 and to make sure that it's pointing downwards or angled down towards the ground if you suffer with the curve to the right. Having said that, if you're someone who hits the ball far too much to the left and hooks the ball, you could very well be one of these players that has the club too closed and turned down. So you may want to look for something in a more neutral position as you take the club back. So for me, this one has, there's not one rule here. You have to very much attach it to your current ball flight. So pay attention to what your ball's doing, film your swing and take a look at your club face when it's on the way back. If it's pointing down too much, and you're hooking to the left, you might want to reduce it. But if it's pointing down and you're still slicing, your problem probably lies elsewhere. So that wraps up today's video, guys. I hope you found it useful. The most common killer moves in the golf swing and some drills to help you avoid making those mistakes. If you thought it was useful, get down in the comments and let me know. If there's anything in there that sounds familiar to you, you think that may be you, get down there and let me know. And if there's any other key mistakes or swing flaws that you see and you want me to help you rectify, post those down below and I'll get to those in a future video. Don't forget, I'm going to post the link to that article from golf.com down in the description. Do go take a look at it. Take a look at the other things that they thought were also an issue, which I haven't quite covered in today's video, but could well do in a future one. And before you leave, if you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button. Consider liking the video if you found it useful and sharing it with your friends if you think it would help them too. Until next time, guys, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you again very soon on another video.